Okay, the regular meeting of the Belleville Zoning Board of Adjustment for October 5th, 2017 will now come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Caruso.
Here.
Giordano. Casa.
Here.
Lozowa. Here. Capucci.
Here.
Sheldon.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Milano.
Yeah.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Yes, you do. Okay.
You're here. You're not here.
Oh, I am here, yes. Will everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Secretary, has notice of this meeting been given in accordance with the Sunshine Law?
Verification of meeting has been advertised according to the Sunshine Law.
Okay. Gentlemen and lady, is there any question about the minutes that you have a copy of? Any amendments to the minutes? Motion made by Mr. Milano to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Caruso. Clerk, call the roll.
Caruso.
Yes.
Casa.
Yes.
Lozowa.
Yes.
Capucci.
Take them apart.
Sheldon.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Milano.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Okay. Any applications for adjournment? Seeing no applications for adjournment, resolution to be memorialized will be done later, so everybody can review everything. I have two communications, which I want to read into the record, and this is from Guardino Di Popolo, Esquire, attorney at law, 95 Edison Road, Sparta, New Jersey. Zoning Board of Adjustment, 152 Washington Avenue, Belleville, New Jersey, 07109. Relation, extension of the site plan approvals for the property located at 78102 Washington Avenue. Dear Chairman, as you may be aware, I represent 78102 Washington Avenue residents, Limited Liability Corporation. Since purchasing the property in 2016, my client has worked diligently with the various departments of the township to get the development of the property underway and are eager to develop the property in a way that will benefit all parties and the town's people. Over the course of the past several months, a site study was conducted to determine if the property qualifies as an area in need of redevelopment. The study has been concluded and was presented before the Planning Board in August of 2017. During that meeting, we were reminded that the site approvals were obtained in June of 2015 and have since expired. We regret that the delay in requesting an extension was a result of our misunderstanding and that the plans would not expire given the current study under review and the fact that the contract with City Water has not been finalized. At this time, we respectfully request that the site plan approvals be extended for an additional 2 years, and thank you in advance for your attention in this matter. I consulted with Mr. Rago, and he tells me you can get up to 3 one-year extensions, not a 2-year extension. Okay, but then we have a subsequent letter. I think the first one was dated September 12th, 2017. The second is September 27th, 2017, by the same attorney, Guardino Di Popolo. And it was sent to Mr. Frank Di Lorenzo, construction official and zoning officer. Same address, 152 Washington Avenue, Belleville. Relation, extension of the site plan approvals for the property located at 78102 Washington Avenue. Dear Mr. Di Lorenzo, as you may be aware, I represent 78102 Washington Avenue Residents Limited Liability Corporation, or LLC. Could be a limited liability company. You may recall that on September 12, 2017, we made a request for an extension of the site approvals on the above property just prior to the Planning Board meeting this month. As it appears that this has caused some confusion with regards to the redevelopment, we respectfully withdraw our request for an extension at this time without prejudice and preserve our rights under Chapter 40:55D-52. Please be guided accordingly. And both were signed Guardino di Popolo. Okay, so those are in the record. Now, we'll go on to our first case tonight on the agenda. ZB 2017-14, 12 Campbell Avenue, owned by Joseph and Maria Longo. The applicant is proposing to construct a driveway on the east side of the property. Can we have our experts sworn in, please?
First, Gina, are we good on notice?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Frank, you there? I'm here. Frank and Tom, raise your right hand. With regard to this application and the second application, do you swear that all testimony and comments that you may give shall be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. For the record, Mr. Lorenzo, zoning officer, Mr. Paris, planner engineer.
Yes.
Good evening, Chairman.
Good evening.
Board.
Before we begin, can I just make a comment?
Yes, Mr. Yes, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment before this hearing begins. As all of the board members are aware, and many members of the audience, the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law, which governs the legal proceedings of our board, makes it very clear that if a board member has the slightest conflict of interest, they must necessarily recuse themselves. Similarly, if there's any possible bias or prejudice in the case, that zoning board member must also recuse themselves. Now, in the 3+ years I've been a member of this board, I can unequivocally say that every member of this board treats every applicant, every case with impartiality and prejudice. But notwithstanding my fervent convictions, it's necessary for me to recuse myself from Mr. Longo's case in order to protect the integrity of the zoning board in this quasi-judicial process. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to step down.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that would mean that both our alternate members will be voting on this application. You may proceed.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Paul Baumann. I am not representing Mr. Longo as an attorney because I am not licensed to do so. I am representing him as a planner/agent to present his case for the board's consideration for 2C bulk variances that he needs in order to construct a driveway on his property.
And you do have a license for that?
I have a license as an engineer and a planner in the state of New Jersey.
So will you be testifying for both engineer and planning?
A little bit of both.
Okay. As long as your license is current, it's okay.
Mr. Brown, why don't you raise your right hand, please? With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Yes.
And just for the record, state your name again, spell your last name, please.
Name is Paul J. Baumann, B-A-U-M-A-N.
Mr. Baumann has appeared before this board many times.
Yes.
Qualified as an engineer, a planner and engineer.
Do you have copies of this? Because I got a copy of this today. Are you going to hand this out?
Yes.
Okay. Can we do that first?
Sure.
Thank you.
Maybe that's a good idea that I hand you everything I have so we can just go.
Yes, I think that's
Thoughtfully
perfect to move right along. I love to move right along.
I have two sets of pictures and a set of sketch plans for each board member. May I introduce these as
Yes,
evidence?
Why don't we,
Mark them into evidence, please.
These are both the same package. They consist of a single photo attached to a package of numbered photos.
Does that include this plan?
No.
why don't
That's
we mark the package has been marked A2.
Okay.
Right.
The package, A1 is the
The
notice.
proofs, the notices are A1. This is A2.
So this
What
is-
I've done is give half of the board one set of those plans
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
and another one going to the other half of the board.
Okay.
My copier broke, and I'm sorry for that, otherwise I'd
That's
give
all right.
everybody.
What do you have? Do you have this?
I have this, sufficient copies for everybody, a sketch plan.
That's the more important.
So this is the only one that we have for A2.
But you have two
Sets.
sets
So
of
let me
What's the other set?
start that one that way.
Thomas has it, just send it up.
Yeah, you can
Next one's going to be 83.
And the photos, Mr. Baumann, when were they taken?
The top photo was taken by my client, I believe about 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and the rest of them, if the board would look on the back of each one, they're numbered 1 through 6. 1 of 6, 2 of 6, etc., up to 6 of 6. Those were taken by me 2 days ago. The sketch plan that I gave you is dated October 3rd, 2017.
And I got one. One set one down there. This is A3. Just pointing at it's A3.
Yeah.
The next right here. This is next door. This is his house. Yes, yeah, I'm looking.
Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Campbell?
Okay, basically the application centers around 2 variances. One for the width of the driveway being deficient from what the township's ordinance calls for 10 feet. The applicant can only provide 8 feet, 5 inches plus or minus in certain sections, maybe up to 9 feet in other sections along the stretch of his side yard to face of house. The second variance is the location of the driveway. Ordinance requires 5 feet from a property line. Obviously, with the tight constraints that the property exists in now, 0 setback can be provided. We need every inch of land from an existing retaining wall to the house to create this driveway. I believe that both of these variances can be granted under NJSA 40:55D, Section 70C, Paragraph 2, where the benefits to be accrued substantially outweigh any detriments to the granting of the variance. I'd like to establish certain facts so it helps you understand why I believe there are certain benefits that outweigh any detriment. Mr. Longo's residence was built in 1924. It's the only one on his block that does not have a driveway. So there is a existing factor called parking on the street. That is very tight in that neighborhood. I've been there on several occasions, both during the day and evening. It's very difficult to find a parking space. One time when I went there, I had to walk a block and a half to get a parking space because every occupied space existed in the block that Mr. Longo resides at. Many of the residents have multiple cars, and therefore they occupy their driveways, and some of them have more than a simple 1 or 2 cars, and they park out on the street. And when there is an event, such as visitation of friends, relatives, or a party, it's virtually impossible to park along the street. So for that reason, Mr. Longo wants to create a driveway. His limitations are the geography of his land. I gave you a handout of a picture showing one of the extreme parking situations that has occurred where one of the neighbors has parked his boat and his truck, in some cases for extended periods of time. That clogs up at least 3 parking spaces. So it's just typical of what the conditions are at the site.
Did you witness it? What address is this? Is this something?
It's directly across the street from Mr. Longo's residence. I didn't get an address number.
It's directly across the street. It's either, put one number up or one number down.
Yeah, it's probably number 13. So I'm sure I've given you ample reasons to see the benefits of granting the variance. Let me go to discuss why we're creating what we're proposing on that sketch plan. I gave you a series of 6 photos. On the back of each tells you what you're looking at. Photo number 1 is the view along the east property line, which shows the existing retaining wall. It appears to be constructed of interlocking block. I'm going to give credit to the neighbor that built that wall, although I think Mr. Longo contributed to it. But let's call it the neighbor's existing retaining wall. If you measure from the inside face of that wall to the house, you can only get about 8 feet, 5 fraction inches, tapering up to maybe 9 feet in the back of the property. The proposal is to create that wide and a little bump out where there is an existing retaining wall, and I've shown that on the sketch plan.
You're talking about the one with the railroad ties?
Yes, that would be replaced, and the new interlocking block retaining wall would go over to the existing face of stairway, which is better depicted on photograph number 2.
Now, I have a question because of what you just said. In the fourth picture, that is the building to the left of his property, looking at it from the front, and the driveway is very similar, although it's paved, stone, etc. And what I'm saying to you is, if you notice, that wall, retaining wall on the left, I believe it's covered with cement, so I don't know what's under it, but it's protecting the drain. If you put the block exactly where the steps are, there would be no protection of the drain on this property.
The drain on this property has to be relocated.
You're going to relocate the drain?
The extension of the drain to the curb is going to have to be replaced.
Where is it going to go?
It's going to go into the street with the town's permission as it exists today, but it's got to be veered off by about a foot from where it's located now,
To the left?
to the left.
Closer to the steps?
Correct.
Is it going to be on the outside of the retaining wall that you're proposing, or in part of the retaining wall?
It will be on the,
Because technically, here's why I'm asking the question. Technically, if you put the wall there, then that would prevent nothing from a car hitting the building, the foundation of the building. What I'm saying is, why isn't the retaining wall being put as an extension of the building itself, like it is in the property to the left?
it could be, Mr. Longo preferred having a little bump out to give somebody an extra angle if they were backing into the spot or coming from the opposite direction to get into the driveway. But it certainly can be relocated to be coincident and have a straight line retaining wall with
I'm
the...
just worried about somebody hitting the building, that's all, and cause
I
damage
think-
to the foundation.
I think Mr. Longo is perfectly willing to take whatever the board and its engineer recommends we finalize the plan to be.
Now, let me ask you another question. Is this going to be excavated to make it level with the sidewalk?
No,
Because I
we'll-
noticed in the plan that I was given today, which you marked as A3, there is going to be an interlocking retaining wall at the end of the driveway in the front, all the way up.
all the way in the back.
That's what I'm saying. Is this going to be at an incline, or is it going to be done straight?
We're planning on having the minimal amount of excavation so that the driveway would follow the slope along the edge of the house so as not to create more of a retaining wall to the back. It's not a great deal of difference. There's only about 2 foot of retaining wall that might be able to be shrunken down to 1.5 feet, in the worst case to maybe 2.5 to 3 feet. It's not a great retaining wall difference one way or the other. It's just to try to avoid more slope change than is necessary. But that, again,
Well,
is...
the reason I brought this up, and 3 of us went out and inspected this afternoon, Mr. Petrucci, myself, and Mr. Caruso. And the biggest concern is on the right, the way the slope is now. If we were worried about somebody coming out of the car because where that retaining wall on the right that you mentioned is next to the neighbors, we were worried the way the slope is now, a person could come out and fall.
If they were backing into the spot, yes.
Well, no, if they were going forward.
Oh,
Because
the passenger could, yes,
Yes.
but the driver.
yes, that's what I'm saying, driver wouldn't, the passenger could. So we were looking to do something to avoid that from possibly happening.
Well, there could be something created along the interior face of the wall that would serve as a notice, not to be conflicting
Like
with
a
the
door
door
guard
swing.
from the wall itself?
Yeah. I believe the other photos that I've given you show something that could be derived.
I don't know. Can you see the thing on the right? That's what I'm talking about.
If you look at picture number 3 of 6, it shows the neighbor's driveway to the left of Mr. Longo's,
Yeah,
and there is
that
a,
metal guard there.
yes, something like that could be
Metal
installed.
railing or a guard somewhere where if the car was to open the door, it would hit. That's my point.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, exactly.
Yes, if the board thinks that that would be a better design, we can certainly amend the plan to show that.
Okay. Anybody, go ahead, you can continue the testimony. I'm sorry I interrupted,
Oh, that's okay,
but I
Jim.
like to get to the point when it comes up.
You're absolutely right. So now, from the standpoint of pluses and minuses, I've shown you the pluses, what could result in an improvement to the property, and I drew some additional comparisons for you by showing you additional photos number 3, 4, 5, and 6. To the left of Mr. Longo's house, there is a driveway at a steeper slope than what's proposed under my plan. That's amended by photo number 4. And when you get to number 5 and number 6, it shows you the right side of Mr. Longo's property, where a neighbor has a fortunate situation where they have a wider driveway curb cut and wider driveway, but there's only 16 feet of depth between the town's sidewalk and the fence that's on the neighbor's property. So I did that to illustrate the fact that we don't need to go very, very deep to create parking space, and what we're proposing is 20 feet. So it's more than adequate to get a car in, off the public sidewalk, and safely within the bounds of his property.
You're talking about the 20 feet from the sidewalk itself, the end of the sidewalk where it would come onto his property, up until the front of the parking space that you're proposing.
Right, it would be fully enclosed on his property within his property line to the back.
Okay.
Now, saying all of that, what's the conclusion I want you to reach? I've given you the benefits part of the statute requirement, and if you look at it objectively, there won't be any negative impact on any of the adjoining properties, and it will bring Mr. Longo's site into better compliance with your zoning code and your zoning ordinance and your master plan, because it now will provide at least one parking space, even though a requirement would be for 4. It's better than where it is now, where there is none provided. So I believe weighing the benefits against the detriments, benefits far outweigh the detriments. And so from that conclusion, I would ask the board to draw an approval process decision.
Questions by members of the board based upon the testimony of the specialist?
No, but I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Your suggestion about the wall being straight down, to the foundation, an alternative to that is let them bump it over, put a heavy-duty bollard, make it smooth.
You mean the pillar, metal pillar?
Actually, Mr. Fuji is right. It's better for getting in and out of the vehicles coming on. Let them relocate the downspout.
Okay.
I mean, that makes.
You may not even have to.
Might even have to.
It's a bollard, no?
Right, if you put the bollard.
No, once you put that there, that solves the problem,
It's not
exactly.
more-
It would protect it
Right.
on the left side of the driveway, yes. It's good ideas.
One in the corner?
No, one in front of the back.
Lined up with the house, so there's no way you would hit the house or the drain.
And if you look into drawings here, folks, so we're all on the same page. If you look at that sketch that they provided, unlike his neighbors goes past the
Yes.
back door, which I'm not in favor of. This one does not,
No, it doesn't.
okay, so, from that perspective. And if you look at the other neighbor, the car does intrude onto the sidewalk,
Yes,
so, you know, that.
that's the
so-
neighbor to his right.
Which this does not. So, from common sense point of view,
Exactly.
you know, a bollard and something that takes the car off the street.
What about on the right side? Where the retaining wall is? What would you propose there? Would agree to put something similar, like a railing?
You wanted that angle in, I'm not a proponent of that.
No, we put something else, we
The
put a
reason
railing.
why I'm not, so, I acquiesced to Frankie and Mr. Hertz to come up with a suggestion.
Mr. Harris,
My comments, I was gonna suggest the bollard, like, I already had it written on the plan, to put a bollard at the corner of the building. I think you're gonna have to put some kind of step down to the existing sidewalk at the back retaining wall, because you're just gonna have a sidewalk in front.
You can have a drop.
And I would think, if you decide to approve it, I thought maybe a railing or something on top, you could probably
the
attach it to
retaining
the top of the wall.
Right.
And,
well, that's what I was talking about.
yeah,
I don't like
not on the
the
inside,
angle iron because,
I wouldn't put
I
it
don't know. I like the railing better too.
I do too.
I always wanted the railing. The angle iron was just because you brought it up.
No, I don't believe
But
it.
I said I wanted something on the right. And I think I said a railing, but I agree, a railing would be perfect on the right side on top of the retaining wall.
Yeah, I think that angle iron you saw was cars going off the...
Probably, yes.
And that's more slippery than pavement.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Well, no, we're asking
How
questions.
much of a drop-off is it gonna be from, how much of a drop-off is that retaining wall gonna be? And are you gonna take away from the 20-foot and put a step,
No, we can,
cut back further?
Recess.
Right, recess it back,
yeah, we can make the stairs come into the 20-foot.
right, yeah. I
Instead
don't
of-
wanna take away,
Coming further into the area.
but
You're talking about a shallow retaining wall to begin with. You're only talking about
Yeah.
2.5 feet.
one step then and drop back onto the property.
Well, it
Correct.
might be 2 or 3, but it doesn't matter. It's going into the interior of the lot.
Right, well, your finished product will have 20-foot of driveway,
Yes.
correct?
Any other questions by members of the board? Any questions by members of the public of the witness based upon testimony only? Yes, sir. Come up. Name and address, please.
Shane Murphy, 86.
Come up, sir, because we're on video. So everybody wants to know who's talking.
Shane Murphy, 86 Dewood Ave, Belleville. I was wondering if we're going to give up more green space in town. Can we alleviate the parking issues and force?
That has nothing to do with us.
No.
We're only concerned about this specific
Yes.
case.
Can we force, instead of 1 space, can we force them to make 2 or 3 spaces to
No,
alleviate?
it's not
more?
enough space, sir.
No? Okay, thank you.
Only because of the back door that I used.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to ask the questions of the, go ahead, Mr. Frantantoni, come on up.
Yes, I'm just curious, being...
Come up so you show up in the video, please.
I'm just curious, being Mr. Longo recently admitted he moved to Florida, is this being...
This is out of order,
Is
sir.
this for his personal use?
This has
Sir,
nothing to do
sir,
with
that's
the case.
academic, that's not germane to the case.
Why isn't it?
It isn't germane to the case, this is a land use case. Has nothing to do with where he lives. A person could live in California and do this.
But you're saying the width is only going to be about 8 feet, and you're asking for a railing or...
It's 8 feet at the base and up to 9 at the top.
8'5".
Is that sufficient to open 2 doors on a car?
Well, it's the same exact space as the house next door that we're talking about with the pavers. We went there and measured it today. Same exact space.
And you could open both doors on the car?
Well, he could probably open one, or because he's all the way back. The car we observed was all the way in the back. He's not going that far back.
Yeah,
He's
is
only
that-
going to be in the front.
You're going, is that correct, 20 feet from the sidewalk?
From the property line where it meets the sidewalk going interior to Mr. Longo's lot, yes, 20 feet.
From the inside of the sidewalk, the outside of the sidewalk?
No, the inside.
Mr. Frantantoni, we were going to make sure that there's 20 foot of finished driveway from off the sidewalk onto the property. And I mean, I won't vote yes to anything
Well, I'm
less than
concerned
that.
that 8 feet is pretty narrow, opening doors on both sides.
It is narrow.
It is.
It is narrow. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, it's narrow. All right, let's go, Joe.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary Higgins, 148 Brighton Avenue, Belleville. I have a question for this gentleman right here. You're the expert witness, correct?
Supposedly.
Right. You're a planner and also engineer,
Yes.
and you have a license in New Jersey, current?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very good, thank you. That's my first question. My second question was, I saw in the Belleville Times that there was a notice originally for a subdivision.
No,
Correct.
ma'am, there was a second notice made because there was a problem with that and it was redone with a proper notice.
Okay, yeah, well, I have a problem with that. Did you advise him to change it to a variance or the width of the driveway?
That's
not testimony.
Ma'am, that's not based upon his testimony. It's only based upon his testimony only.
Okay, well, I have a little problem with that. I don't think it's right for anybody to give Mr. Longo through third parties, all right, any information to change it from a subdivision to a driveway. That's inside information, and nobody on the board should be doing that. Thank you. Mary Higgins, on the record.
Yeah, no, it's not.
All right. Any other questions by members of the public of the witness? Any more questions by members of the board of the witness? Okay, is there any member of the public which wishes to give testimony relevant to the case? Seeing none, do you wish to sum up or anything?
No, I think I've given you ample reasons for the board to consider both variances under C2 criteria. If there are any other questions you have, I'll be glad to try to answer them. I will agree with Mr. Longo's consent to change the plans that were submitted as a sketch plan to meet your requirements and be finalized for approval by Mr. Harris.
Okay, members of the board, it's up to your pleasure.
I think I pretty much put them what I was thinking on the record already regarding the width of the driveway. It's not going by the back door.
Right.
It's all I can, it's not going by the back door, so it can't injure anyone. And there is going to be a railing, which is something that,
What we'll put as a condition.
and like Mr. Mafucci, we're going to put a bell in there, so I have no problem.
Those will be two of the conditions.
Minimum 20 foot. Top of the retaining wall on the right side, the bollard corner on the left side.
Like protecting the downspout.
Talk into the mic.
You don't have mics.
Talk loud.
I am. Maybe hearing.
Okay. So you make a motion to approve with those conditions?
You asked
This
for
is
comments.
Was
comment,
there any other comments?
as long as, I don't have a problem as long as.
I'm sorry, George, I can't.
I'm sorry. I don't have a problem as long as the driveway is 20-foot finished product, with the step in the back coming off the retainer wall, bollard, right, step, fencing, like we discussed. I don't have an issue with it. Anyone else?
One question. Is it gonna be paved?
Yes, asphalt paving.
Asphalt paved, okay, that's the only question. That was the only thing that was left out.
And that's
Okay.
Shows on the plan.
Anybody else have anything to say? Okay.
obviously appropriate permitting as well.
What was-
The appropriate permits.
Yes. And finally, agree to any suggestions by Mr. Harris.
Absolutely.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Motion.
approve with the
Conditions.
conditions that we just went over.
Okay.
Want to name them?
You want to name them?
It's nice you guys are having a private meeting up there, we can't hear a thing.
I made a motion to
then you should move up. You
approve
should
with the
move up in the
conditions
movement.
that we
The whole
just
audience
discussed.
Okay?
Okay, we had our normal conditions and with extra conditions would be a bollard on the left side of the driveway at the corner of the house by the downspout, railing on the top of the retaining wall, right side of the house, 20-foot depth off the sidewalk to the head of the parking space, asphalt paving, per Tom Herrick's comments and review for the site issues.
And a block retaining wall all the way to the top, because that's what's on the plans.
Got it.
Okay?
And steps leading to the existing sidewalk in the
Steps in the
back.
back.
Yes.
Can I just get a clarification?
Go ahead.
I thought the railing was supposed to be on the top of the right retaining wall,
It is.
not in the rear.
Right, and a white retaining wall.
Right, right retaining. Well, that's the rear of the driveway, technically, up the top.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not one at the top of where you are, we're talking about on the side.
That's what
Side
I understood,
retaining.
but I didn't hear it read that way, so that's why. I
Okay,
asked.
we don't need a railing on the top. How high is that gonna be at the top?
2.5 feet.
High? From the top, bottom of the driveway? No, listen to me.
Barbara, I think it's-
Show me the picture.
I didn't hear what you said.
What I'm trying,
I just kinda
hold on.
thought or something.
Here's what we're talking about, there's only the walk to here. So there's gonna be space between here and here, that's what I'm saying.
It might be shallower than that, depending on how the final grade matches the contour of what's out there.
Well, they don't want nobody walking out of the yard and falling down the fence if there's no car parked there.
Right.
So technically, maybe the railing should come like an L to protect everybody, so nobody can fall into the driveway.
If it's a safety hazard, if it's a shallow retaining wall at that point, a stair depth or less, we won't bother, but if it's anything more than that, we'll put connection.
Mr. Harris,
Once Mr. Harold signs off on it,
yeah,
that's
Well, I
it.
think that when he finally comes in, me and Frank will take a look at it, and if it's required, we'll make a put a railing in the back.
okay. But technically, the railing's on the side.
That's the sidewalk?
No, the steps are gonna be at the furthest point off the property,
Got it.
off the sidewalk, of course.
It lead to the sidewalk on the side of the house.
Got it.
The east side of the house.
Yeah, it's not going up to those steps. It's not going up, it's not reaching that way.
There's a retaining wall at the end of the driveway. There, instead of a drop-off, there needs to be a step.
Steps.
Oh, you mean to walk down into the
Yeah,
driveway?
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can understand. Yeah, that's perfect, that way you only need the railing on the right. Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay. That's it.
Who's that?
Motion made to.
Motion was made
By me.
by Mr. Smith. I need a second. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Milano. Clerk call the roll.
Caruso.
Yeah.
Casa.
Yes.
Loza. Yes. Fucci.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Milano.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still on.
We're still on, we'll take a,
Before you do,
yes.
since Mr. Sheldon
Kiss
will
my
be
ass,
stepping back up
ma'am.
and there will be a full
That's what he said.
I would like to step away. I have a case to take care of.
Stay well, baby.
All right. Yes, you may do that. Do we need a recess, or you want to go right to the next case? Recess. We'll have a recess, and we'll reconvene at 10 to 8. Meeting will now come back to order. Mr. Shelton has rejoined the board to hear the second case on the agenda, ZB 2017-015, 517-523 Joralemon Street, owned by 517 Joralemon LLC. The applicant is proposing to add an additional studio apartment to the first floor. Mr. Gassion, I assume you're the attorney for record.
Correct assumption, Mr. Chairman.
Very good.
Should I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, counsel's name is Robert Gassion. The firm is Gassion Tobacco, 524 Union Avenue in Belleville. I represent the applicant in this matter, 517 Joralemon LLC. My client's the owner of 517-523 Joralemon Street, which is used as 4 commercial units on the first floor and 6 residences behind and above. The municipal records, however, reflect that the legal usage is 5 residential units and 4 commercial units. We're here this evening seeking approval to use the 6th residential unit, a studio apartment. This is not a certification application, this is a variance application. We need site plan approval, D variance for use, and a D variance for density, as well as a parking variance. There are also bulk variances that are pre-existing. The witnesses you'll hear from are Perry Sessa of 570 Joralemon LLC, Larry Roberts, a longtime commercial tenant, Frank Miletto, the architect, and Anthony Marucci, the engineer and planner. Mr. Sessa will review what happened when he purchased the property and review some of the relevant documents. He will also discuss the residential tenants and their cars and parking accommodations. Mr. Roberts will discuss how long he has been at the location and the studio apartment in question. The final witness, strike that. Frank Miletto will describe the structure and review the interior makeup of the studio apartment. The final witness will be Anthony Marucci, and he will review the parking and discuss the violations. He will also review the planning reasons that justify the granting of the relief requested and discuss the negative criteria. I'd like to call my first witness, Mr. Sessa.
And note that notice of publication is better.
Okay.
Mark A. Raise your right hand.
You're standing right there.
Okay. With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, so?
I do.
State your name and spell your last name, please.
Perry Sessa, S-E-S-S-A.
It's P-E-R-R-Y?
Correct.
Mr. Sessa, what is your business address
339 Bloomfield Avenue, Caldwell, New Jersey.
and your occupation?
Real estate broker.
Are you a member of 517 Joralemon LLC?
Yes,
And does 517 Joralemon own 517, 523 Joralemon Street in Belleville?
that's correct.
And when did you purchase it?
October of 2014. Am I supposed to get that echo like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody who stands there does.
Okay.
At the time of the purchase, did you think it was a 6 residential unit building?
Yes, I did.
And is there paperwork to support why you thought that?
Yes.
I show you a copy of the listing agreement. Does that reflect that it was a 6 residential unit building?
Yes, it does.
A1, Mr. Chairman?
A2.
A2? I show you a copy of a Hawley real estate document. Does that reflect 6 residential units and income on those units?
Yes, it does.
I show you Exhibit A. Is this the exhibit from your real estate purchase contract?
Yes,
And does it reflect 6 residential units?
yes.
A4, I guess?
What was A4? Sorry.
No, A4 is just coming.
Okay, okay.
I show you a series of rent leveling documents. Do these all reflect that this property has 6 residential units? And are these a series of documents over a number of years in the township of Belleville?
That's correct.
Can I ask a question? I hate to do that. But when you give me something that I'm confused about,
Sure.
it has all the rents, which I have no problem with. But at the end, it says gross income 109,000. Is that per year? Because you have all monthly stuff here.
No idea. I really don't
Wanna
care. The
go
whole
back to you?
concept.
That's per year.
Huh?
He's answering
Oh,
the
that's
question.
per year?
Correct.
Okay.
But I'm confused as well because your case is a variance, right? Not a pre-existing non-conforming, right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Milano?
Your case is a variance.
Absolutely it
Not a
is.
pre-existing non-conforming. Not pre-existing non-conforming.
That's correct, but
Not-
I still believe that this proof is relevant.
Okay. I don't, okay.
It's okay. Reasonable men can differ.
You're absolutely right.
Mr. Sessa, I show you a certificate of inspection. And does that reflect 6 units for this property?
Yes, it does.
Is that A5?
A6 by now, I think.
A6.
What was A?
Still here?
A5 is,
This is A4.
I thought A4 was rent level.
No, look at the schedule of receipts and security deposits.
No? Okay. Inspection, okay, it's A6.
Excuse me before we continue. That was inspection by whom and when?
Multiple Housing Inspection Division, State of New Jersey.
DCA.
Department of Community Affairs.
No, okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Same question Mr. Milano asked?
No,
Yeah,
I have a different
copy.
question. My question is, how did you discover this problem?
That's going to be my next question.
Oh,
You took it? You took the words out of my mouth. So, Mr. Sessa, when you purchased this property, based on all the records you reviewed, did you conclude you had 6 residential units?
That's correct.
And how did it come that you learned it wasn't a legal 6-unit residential building in addition, obviously, to the commercial?
I went down to the building department to file a CO for a vacant corner unit on the first floor. I went in.
Filed for a C of O.
Filed for a C of O, CCO, or whatever one calls it. Filed the paperwork. Everything was fine, dropped off my check, left, and half an hour after I left, I forget her name, the building department, she gives me a call and she says, have you ever filed a, whatever kind of document I needed?
Vacancy control?
Mr. Harris, not Mr. Harris, Mr. Di Lorenzo, can you help him with this, whatever document he's talking about?
Maybe a rent roster.
A rent roster with the building department. I said, I wasn't aware that I have to, but I have been filing since I closed in the rent control, obviously all 6 units, whatever. So I went down to, I went back down there. I think I spoke to Mr. Di Lorenzo, and the gentleman that actually did the original CCO came back out to the building and said, well, let's inspect it, let's see what's going on. I said, because I got 6 units and I bought it that way. So he came out to the building, checked all the units, and he says, everything looks okay, like we have 6 units, but the paperwork says 5. The unit in question had, smoke detector and
The
door closer.
paperwork in the construction official's office, is that correct? That's what you're talking about. All your paperwork said 6, but when you went to get the CCO, you were told by the construction official's office it was not 6, it was 5.
Correct, not the
No, not, when you went down, you went because you were switching tenants. Not because of when you were closing, you went for
Correct,
sale.
correct.
Correct?
I was switching tenants, but not for the unit in question.
Right. I get it.
It just, whatever, it kind of raised the red flag and said, oh,
Got
you
it.
know, that's
Got it.
kind of what happened. So,
And did your attorney who represented you on the purchase, which was not my law firm, ever tell you that this was a 5-unit?
no. No, so what happened was, when I met with the town, they came down and they said, well, we don't know, you have to look at Mr. Di Lorenzo, maybe you can do a certification. So my first phone call was, what's going on? Let me call the attorney. So I called up the attorney, reputable firm, I used him for commercial real estate transactions before. First thing I said to him, I said, never saw the CO closing, send me a copy.
Right.
I get the copy, and he sends it over to me, still doesn't say anything, and I say, I think you dropped the ball here, you kind of missed something. This says 5, I got 6. So that's how this all comes
And
back.
that was my question. You answered my question.
Correct, but my thing was, I own other buildings, so I always make sure that everything complies, so I did an Oprah, went down to rent control, and everything on my end, besides the only piece of paper I saw, said it was a 6-unit.
Do you have it fully rented with 6 residential tenants at the present time?
I do.
And did you discuss with these residential tenants, or are you aware of what they do with regard to parking?
Yes,
And how many parking spaces do you have behind the building?
I have 5.
And can you tell us what the situation is vis-à-vis cars and parking with the current tenants at the building?
I have 3 tenants in total that drive and park. I have a second floor tenant, Anthony Magara. He drives, but is very friendly with the neighbor. He's been parking in her driveway forever, so he doesn't utilize his space. I have another girl on the second floor, Jessica Lampado. She parks, has 1 car. I have a tenant, Michael Hyatt, doesn't drive, from my knowledge, doesn't have a driver's license. He's on the second floor. I have another second floor tenant, last name is Velez. He drives and parks. Julio Lai, first floor tenant, has a car, parks in a lot, so that would be 3. And the unit in question doesn't drive.
So you have 3 cars that park in the lot.
That's correct.
And so tonight, when I went to examine the site and saw only 2 cars in the parking lot at about 6:20, is that a normal thing? There's only 2 or 3 cars at
Yes.
night in the parking lot? And did you contact Mr. Marola, who owns the property basically catty corner to your building across the street from you?
I did. I spoke with him and asked him if he had any spots for rent, and he said he has spots for rent in the pharmacy that he would charge my tenants or myself, however we drafted it, $60 a month.
But you do not have a written agreement with him at this time?
I do not.
And at this time, your tenants have adequate parking?
That's correct.
And did he indicate that if you needed it, he would allow you to rent those spaces in his parking lot?
That's correct.
And did he indicate that if required, he would be willing to enter into some sort of a written agreement with regard to a space or 2 or 3, whatever it was?
Yes, he would.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Any questions by members of the board of the witness? Mr. Mafucci.
Where is this person who can rent you parking spaces? I'm trying to figure.
Directly across the street. If you're, I'm sorry, I grew up in this neighborhood and
Close by the pharmacy.
I'm jumping quickly.
Close by the pharmacy.
Yes,
Yes.
crossed by the pharmacy.
Okay. And one other question. How many apartments are on the tax records?
5.
5.
5. All right.
I would have put in a tax record if I had it, and I might have been going for certification if I had it. The tax records are 5, and therefore, we are seeking a D variance as opposed to a certification.
I'm sorry. Do you have any idea how long the 6th apartment has been there?
I have, the next witness will testify.
Okay, any other questions by members of the board of the witness? Any questions by members of the public of the witness?
Well, I just want to redirect to this young man.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot your first name.
Harry.
Harry. So, when you close, your tax bill said 5 family.
When I closed,
Yeah,
I mean, would I have that prior to closing?
Yes.
yeah.
At the closing,
What,
you're
I didn't hear that.
When you have a closing, you get a tax bill.
Oh, not necessarily.
No, not,
Definitely not. I'll answer that.
Let me,
Most people do not get the
I'll go
tax bill
another
at
way.
closing.
I'll go another way. How long are you in the building?
2014.
Okay, you've gotten tax bills since.
This has occurred pretty recently after we closed, I would say this happened.
You closed in 14, we're in 17. You've received tax bills already, correct? Tax bills? You get them in the mail.
I mean, I would assume, but does a tax bill actually say 5, I don't,
You don't get tax bills?
I did get tax bills. I mean, I'm a real estate broker. I mean, I've been through 100 transactions
Okay,
throughout this
no,
year.
no,
I just
as an
never
owner,
saw
as an
a
owner.
tax bill that said 5 units.
okay.
As an owner, you get a tax bill.
Correct.
It says 5 family on it, correct?
You're asking me correct. I never visually looked at that and saw it.
Hey, Tommy.
Do you have the copy with you?
I don't.
Okay, no problem.
It was brought to my attention
Now,
recent. I mean, this has been going on for a while.
I understand, that's,
A year and a half, you know? So, I mean, if I own the building 3 years, it's only, if I receive the first tax bill, I mean, I own multiple properties, I never thought to look at it, and I wouldn't have bought the building if I thought it was 9 units. That's,
I understand your position, I understand that. I'm just asking a question. You're telling me you never saw the tax bill?
I mean, my sister reviews the tax bill, I mean, did you ever, I mean, that's the only thing, I mean, I manage the building and she does the paperwork, so.
I understand, I don't disbelieve you. I'm just asking the question. You know, I own multiple buildings as
No,
well.
the thing about it is, I understand the tax bill, and I don't know if I should be talking or not, but if it's okay. I mean, I understand the tax bill portion of it, but every single documentation I have and received, you know, with the state, with rent control from Belleville, everything said 6 units, so I wasn't looking for something that would say something different.
Only because you brought up that you're a realtor, and I am as well, all right? Are we done?
Yes.
Okay. So, we have full disclosure, what I'm saying, that we all know and your counsel knows, you go by what the code enforcement says, the tax bill does not determine legality to a unit, correct? Mr.
You're asking me the question?
Well, I was asking.
Yeah, the tax bill does not determine legality, absolutely.
So, as a realtor, I know you know that.
I mean, I don't love the tax bill, you know, I have no idea, you know.
I
know
don't agree with that, Mrs. Lano.
Okay.
You're more educated with regard to that aspect than a lot of other realtors. People sometimes don't even know that when they pay on February 1, they're paying for January, February, and March. Never mind looking to see how many units there are on the tax bill.
Well, it does say a quarter on the tax bill.
Sure.
Quarter means 3 months.
I'm telling you, the number of people that don't understand that is probably 40%.
So,
In addition, to explain something else,
So can I ask you a question?
yeah,
Isn't he saying he's a real estate broker?
he is.
Well, he should know that.
I'm just, you know, I don't agree, and Mr. Milano's question is not accurate when he talks about the tax bill, because most of the time, at a closing, the lender is paying the taxes, and the seller does not walk into the closing with a tax
we
bill.
get a copy of it.
They don't, most of the time,
At a real estate.
let me finish. I've been doing this for
A long time.
45 years. Most of the time, there is not a tax bill at the closing. It's the exception when a tax bill is brought to the closing.
Well, and I backed off of that because of what he said, and I asked him the other question about, you know, well, you own it since 2014, and I'm not saying he's lying, you're making me say, I'm not saying that, it's to me, it's unusual, as an owner of many properties as well, for me not to look at the tax bill and see what I'm paying.
I don't even agree with that, but where I would agree with you
I know you want to.
is, where I agree with you, is at the closing, you would think his attorney would have given him the CLO. That's where the issue should have been
Where it
addressed.
shows.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
And the other thing is, and so on, while we're on it, you even though you get a green card that says 5 family, that doesn't even mean legality as well. Because
But he wouldn't know that necessarily. You know it. You're on a board of
he
adjustment.
owns multiple properties.
My biggest thing was, I checked all the documents that I would normally check for a client. And the only thing I didn't check, because the attorney was handling it, was the CO.
Understood.
And that's the only thing that I could see at that closing that would have said, okay, we have 5 instead of 6. Nothing else in those documents, everything certified was 6 units.
Understood. Okay. As me and Mr. Vashon always say, we agree to disagree. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other member of the board wish to ask any more questions? Any member of the public, again, wish to ask any questions of the witness based upon testimony? Okay, Mr. Gassion.
I just want to ask the same question again. Mr. Sessa, did you do what you considered reasonable to check out the number of units prior to closing on this property?
I did.
And did you learn that it was not a legal 6-family subsequent to buying this property?
No, I did not.
Did you
Yes,
learn
Yes.
when you went to the construction?
Oh, yes, I did.
official
Yes, I
office
thought you meant prior to closing.
that subsequent to you buying, did you learn that this was not a legal 6-family?
Yes.
And did you learn that because you were looking for a C of O or a CCO with regard to one of the units in the building?
I did.
And can you approximate how long that was after the closing took place?
I think it was 6, 7 months afterwards. This has been going on for a while. That's why I didn't, it wasn't like I got multiple tax bills or things I would have noticed that.
And did you contact me probably almost a year ago with regard to this application?
I have, yes.
No further questions?
Let me ask him a question though. Did you inspect the building before you bought it?
I did.
And you inspected the basement too?
Did I inspect the basement?
Yeah.
Of course.
And how many electric meters is there? How many gas meters?
I think I believe there's 10 gas meters and 10 electric.
10 gas and 10 electric. Okay. All right. Any other questions by members of the public or members of the board? Any redirect, Mr. Gassion?
No, thank you, I did not
Finally, it's
redirect.
over. Thank you. You may call your next witness.
Mr. Roberts.
Roberts, could you raise your right hand, please? With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Yes.
Could you state your name and spell your last name?
Okay, technically, my name is Larry R. Sussman. My company is Larry Roberts.
All right, so what's your last name?
Sussman, S-U-S-S-M-A-N.
Larry Sussman. Okay, thank you.
Your business address, Mr. Sussman,
525 Joralemon Street,
and the name of your business.
Larry Roberts Security,
And obviously your occupation is security.
locksmith.
And how long have you been a tenant at 517-523 Joralemon Street in Belleville?
Since 1987.
And is the apartment in question directly behind your shop?
Yes,
And was your shop formerly a barber shop, to the best of your knowledge?
yes.
And for how long, to the best of your knowledge and recollection, has there been an apartment in that section behind your shop?
I can safely say it's in excess of 25 years.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Members of the board? Any members of the public? Dismissed. Next
Thank you.
witness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sussman.
Thank you.
Mr. Mileto.
Yes, sir. Could you raise your right hand with regard to this application? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
So help me God.
State your name, spell your last name.
Frank, middle initial D, Mileto, M-I-L-E-T-O, 14 Beaverbrook Drive, Long Valley, New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mileto is being called to testify as an architect. He has on numerous occasions appeared before this board.
Yes.
I certainly can qualify him, but if...
As long as his license is still good, we'll listen to him. because
Mr.
he's
Mileto, are
been
you
before us
still a
numerous times.
licensed architect of the state of New Jersey?
Yes, sir.
Then would you describe the existing structure on the site?
Let's mark this as I think we're up to 7?
Yes.
A7. You mark that, Mr. Milano? And then describe it after you mark it for the record.
No, it's good. And Mr. Milano, would you go ahead and describe the existing structure on the site?
Yes. And by the way, A7 is a series of 3 plans which the board has as part of your application. Site plan, and then floor plans, and last sheet
Is only the top
area
sheet,
map of the neighboring property owners.
Mr. Milano,
Yes, sir.
is only the top sheet colorized?
Yes,
The rest are untouched?
Yes.
All right, so that's the only one we need to mark.
yes,
Colorized plot plan.
yes. Yeah, yeah, this is just an exploded view of the site plan that's been proposed. The colorization is just for ease of finding what we're talking about. The building's a 2-story masonry structure outlined here. It consists of currently 6 units, 5 upstairs, 4 upstairs, and 2 on the ground level exist. They are there. There's no change, there's been no improvements done. They just the way we presented it on our plan. The unit in question,
If I could,
go ahead.
next question would be, is there any planned alteration or addition to the structure?
No,
So the structure is going to remain exactly the same should this application be approved?
yes,
Okay. Now, the unit in question, can you describe the interior of that unit and point out its location?
yes. I will flip on the page over to the second sheet, which is the floor plans and photographs of the building, front, Lake Avenue, rear, elevation, and an expanded view. The unit in question is on the ground level, first floor level. It is this unit right here, which is shaded on the plan. Consists of a studio apartment, has a galley kitchen, a storage closet, a bathroom with a shower, and open studio dwelling. The dimensions of the room are 11 feet wide by 22 feet long. That's the main room. And then there's a bathroom and storage closet, as well as a little loft area in this corner, which is used for storage only. That's what we found. And what we found is existing conditions that were not new. They were there for a period of years. They were well-worn, older fixtures and units. It wasn't something that was new. And it has adequate light and ventilation to comply with the building code. There's an existing doorway that goes directly outdoors, and there's a second window in the kitchen area, which both will provide the required code-required 5% fresh air and 7% natural light. The building has a smoke detector system in it. The unit has a smoke detector system in it as part of the overall system. The second floor are existing units, not being touched. They've been there for many years, and there's no change in that. But the only thing we're really looking for tonight is to have this studio apartment be permitted as a 6th unit.
Mr. Mileto, you've explained these 6 residential units. Are there also 4 commercial units?
Yes.
Okay. There's no need to describe them, they're not relevant to this, but...
No, they exist, there's no change. The off-street parking calculations are based on what's existing. It is,
There are certain requests within Mr. DiLorenzo's letter and Mr. Harris's letter.
yes,
Have you amended the plans to reflect and provide for those requests?
yes. The only alterations, I'll call them, or requested additional information was on our site plan. Building is the building, and nothing's been done with that unit. But it was requested that we add some street trees along the street, green grass area. It was also asked for lighting, proposed parking lot lighting So we're putting in a 12-foot high pole with the fixture shielded so that it will not spill over the property lines. It's located here next to the adjacent parking lot. There's been a proposed refuge area was asked for to show where it is and what we were doing with it. And it's a proposed refuge area right here in gray. Recycling area 4x8 with a 5-foot high chain link fence around it with micro mesh slats to screen the refuge and recycling area. That's the only changes. There are some building lights that have been added as well to light the parking area, and the client has added, not requested by anyone, but they did it on their own to increase the lighting in the area along Joralemon Street. There's a series of gooseneck lighting fixtures on the building which light the sidewalk area in the front, give it a brighter, better appearance.
I have no further questions of Mr. Mileto.
Mr. Valani.
Could you tell me how the building's heated?
What are they?
How? What's the heating system?
Oh, heating system?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't investigate that. The owner could probably tell
I'm
you.
asking him.
I don't know. I did not investigate the heating system.
Okay, how's that apartment heated?
I don't know. It's heated though. I don't know. I was not asked to provide that information. I didn't think it had anything to do with zoning.
What kind of, the stove, is that electric or gas?
I don't know.
Is there separate meters throughout the apartment, for each apartment?
There's 10, I understand, what?
Each apartment separate meters?
Yes, as far as I know, yes. There's 10 meters, there's 10 units in the building. But I didn't investigate which wire goes to what or what meter goes to what.
So there's 10 meters and there's 10 units.
But
So what's the one for the hallway and all? Where does that come from?
You mean the
landlord's meter.
landlord's meter?
Common area?
Common area.
I don't know. I did not investigate the meters
We
or the
don't know
number
the
of...
heating, we don't know if it's electric, gas.
Well, I have another question. Did you do the sketches?
The drawings?
Yeah.
No, my office did.
Your office did, so it
Yes.
was under your supervision?
Of course.
Okay. Second floor.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the second floor. I know, but I'm gonna move. On the second floor, in the front, on the left, the bathroom. Is that a bathtub or a shower?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Wait a minute.
What just?
Because I have a right to ask the question.
To the application.
You'll find out if you take your time. Is that a
It's a
bathroom?
bathtub.
That's a bathtub.
Yes, sir.
Now, am I correct that every unit, based upon the sketches of your office, has a bathtub except for the studio? The studio's the only one with a shower stall?
Yes.
All right, just asking that question. That's irrelevant.
Can I finish?
Yes, now you may finish. I thought you were done, I'm sorry.
I wanted to ask him, what would be the second entrance from the locksmith? How would you get out?
Which floor level?
The locksmith. The locksmith shop. The front door, and there's a door to the stairwell, right?
Yes.
Could it be conceivable that that space was part of the locksmith shop at one time?
No idea.
Well, I mean, you walk through, I'm saying, looking around.
I understand
That's
that.
why I asked you, heating and cooling and...
My assignment was to concentrate on the unit in question. The existing building...
But you testified
is-
about all the units.
I'm sorry?
You testified about all the units. You didn't just testify about the one unit. You testified about, the whole...
I did?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, you mean that we showed what was there? Well, because I know the board wants to see
Okay, that's why I
the
asked the
uses
question.
of the rest of the building, so we did our best to show what's there, existing, but that's all. We didn't really get into the...
Right. Okay. Now you may have it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other member of the board wish to ask a question? Mr. Mafucci first, then Mr. Shelton.
Question, did you testify that there's adequate lighting,
There's what, lighting?
outdoor lighting?
Yes,
Adequate,
yes.
isn't there only the one window by the kitchen?
There's a window and a door. The doorway counts as light and ventilation under the building code. And the window would probably alone comply because the total unit is 325 square feet. And the window, that would require 5% light, natural light, and that's probably 10%.
Okay, one other. So there's no window in the bathroom, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if there's an exhaust fan or anything?
There's a fan. Fan light
That's all.
combo.
Any, Mr. Shelton?
I had essentially the same question, the same concern about the lighting. The one
Interior
plan-
lighting or?
Well, the window.
The window
amount
light,
of
natural light.
Natural light
Gotcha.
coming through. On the front page of the plans, I see that you have listed restore window above door. So does that mean that that space above the door right now is blocked, and you're going to put a new window
Correct.
in there to give more natural light?
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
There was one there. For some
Right.
reason, over
Looks
the
like
years, somebody put siding across
Yeah,
it.
that's what it looks like. There's
But
some
we'll
sort of
take that
aluminum
out
siding
and
over
provide
it.
a nice
All right. All right.
vented window.
All right.
Any other questions by members of the board, based upon testimony? Any questions by the public, based upon testimony given? None. You may call your next witness.
Mr. Marucci.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. In regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give serve the truth?
I do.
Would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Anthony Marucci, Marucci.
You've been here before, correct?
A
A
number
few
of
times?
times.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, again, as with the previous witness, Mr. Marucci is an engineer, coincidentally an
And he's
engineer
been
for
before us
Bloomfield,
numerous
and a
times.
planner, and has been here on a number of occasions.
And he still has his license.
Absolutely.
I always ask that question.
You have your license as
Don't feel-
both an engineer and your license as a planner.
Yes, I do.
And he'll be testifying as what, both?
Both,
Okay.
mainly planning,
Okay.
but both.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Mr. Marucci, would you please describe the existing site?
Mr. Gasso, can I please
Sure.
submit those photographs, because it's part of my explanation and testimony. The photographs of the place.
A series of 4 photographs, and there's enough copies to go around, I believe.
Are they in packets or?
Yeah, they're stapled together.
Okay, so
A2,
packet will be A8.
A8, I'm sorry, where am I going?
That's a packet of 4 photographs. And Mr. Marucci, when were these taken?
Just a couple of days ago, I took them myself, and as soon as everybody has them, I will describe them, because it is part of my testimony.
So, Mr. Marucci, would you describe the site, and based on the photographs you have, the area surrounding the site?
The site is on Joralemon Street, 517, 523. It's a 2-story brick building, as was stated before, with 4 commercial units on the ground floor, 2 residential apartments behind the stores, and 4 apartments on the second floor. The board now has my photographs. Photograph number 1 shows 2 apartment buildings on Joralemon Street to the west of us, only a couple of doors away from us. Photograph number 2 shows our subject property and the property directly across the street to the west, which is also 2-story. Photograph number 3 now is across the street, that shows the Delta gas station, the luncheonette, which is 2-story, the pharmacy, and to the west of that, again, another apartment building. And photograph number 4 across the street, in between the pharmacy and the apartment building is the parking lot that was described before, where one of the property owners would allow parking if needed.
Is there any change in the structure should this application be approved?
To the best of my knowledge, there will be no changes to the structure other than what I heard just before about the window opening in the rear, and some improvements should this application be approved as far as site improvements.
Would you describe the parking and ingress and egress to the parking?
There are 5 existing parking spaces that come in off the side street in behind the building. They have been striped. I saw them again. My last visit to the site was just a couple of days ago, and they are striped now, which is one of the recommendations by the board engineer.
And you have a number of variances you're seeking with regard to this. Are the key variances the 2 D or use variances and the parking variance?
The key variances are the D variances. The D1 variance is necessary because, let me just backtrack. This is a BA zone, which is a neighborhood retail mixed-use zone that allows retail on the ground floor, residential above. The D1 variance is necessary because 2 of these apartments, one is already existing, the one that's in question, which is really existing, but we're asking for the variance for, we need the D1 variance because it's on the ground floor. The D5 variance is because of density. Obviously, we exceed the density that's allowed at 12 units per acre because of this 6th unit. But what's important is the fact that this building was built before zoning even existed. This building goes back to the 1920s, so we are asking for...
Did you check the town hall to find out when it was built?
I got that information from my client.
Oh, well, from your client, okay.
But it does go back, you look
No,
at the...
I know,
you
the
look at the style
building's
of
built
building,
about
it's
that
been
time,
there.
I'm not gonna argue that point.
My barber was in that building when I was 5 years old,
You had much
which was
more
in the
hair.
1940s.
You had much more hair.
When I had hair. When I had hair. Nick Marola was his name.
Okay.
And the other variance obviously is for parking, but that's a C variance, and hopefully I'll establish that we can be granted that variance based on C2 criteria where the benefits outweigh the detriment.
Since we're on this issue, the density issue that you brought up, that because of density, that's why it is, I believe, the D2 you mentioned?
D5.
The D5?
Yes.
Okay. What is the density that is allowed?
12 units per acre.
What is the density that's allowed based upon the size of the property?
Feb are you ready? Because
1.5.
it's 1.5,
So you're only entitled to 2 units if you round it off?
correct.
Okay.
But again, we're talking about an existing situation.
I understand that. I understand. I'm just
Built
asking-
before density was even a requirement, is that correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, are there other similar buildings as dense as this in the immediate area?
Well, that's why I brought the photographs this evening to show that there are major apartment complexes, and 2 things. One, their density far exceeds what's allowed. Also, if you look at
But
those...
technically, so does this.
Yes, but again, I'm showing that there's the character of the area, and also in the case of the other apartment complexes, there are no retail stores on the ground floor. The apartments go right from the ground floor up.
Okay.
And are they in the same zone as the subject property?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci, would you continue with your testimony?
Well, based on a number of things that were already mentioned this evening, there are, in my opinion, there are special reasons to grant these variances. You heard from the proprietor of the locksmith store that his testimony was that this apartment has been there for approximately 25 years. That's a lot of history. You heard from the applicant or the owner that the state inspections show this as a 6-unit apartment building. You also heard from the owner that the leveling board has this as a 6-unit building. So again,
These are special reasons you're giving me?
no, I'm showing you the
Okay.
history.
No, I'm waiting for it.
I'm giving you the history. The building predates zoning, and with respect to parking, there's testimony that parking, if necessary, if needed, can be accommodated across the street. if this apartment wasn't there, or were not permitted, or not approved, the locksmith shop would actually be increased in square footage, which would require more parking than the apartment would, because it's only a studio apartment. In addition to that, residential uses are actually necessary to support the businesses. That's why you have this mixed-use
I
area.
don't know that.
They would support the luncheonette, the pharmacy, the local businesses. So with respect to the positive criteria, I believe that we do meet some of the purposes of the municipal land use law. Purpose A, the most common, is to promote the general welfare. As I said before, you need the residential component to utilize the businesses, because that's the only way these businesses can survive.
This is your pictures, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me see, how many units you think you showed me in your pictures?
I'm sorry, will say that again?
How many units do you think he showed me in his pictures?
Well, there are quite a few. But that's why adding this 6th unit helps that situation in terms of helping the businesses.
Even though it's over-densified, so if the other buildings want to add more units, I should let them?
But they can't. How could they add more units?
I'm sure they can find a way like we did here.
But again, this is something that's been existing for 25 years.
Well, I don't know if I fully agree with that. I don't.
Purpose E.
I don't.
You don't agree with that, but there's no proof to dispute that. I had a
There was a
witness
tax record
testify
that
to that.
disputes it. There's a tax record that disputes it. Come on. Don't say there's nothing that disputes it. There is. The CO on the closing, which the attorney was lacking, given his client, states it.
That's the town records, I understand that, but the rent control records, the multiple housing certificate, there are various things that show there were 6 units. Various things that show.
Mr. Gassion, let's be really direct with each other. If there was enough evidence, you'd be going for a pre-existing non-conforming use, would you not?
If I had the continuity,
And
I would be going
enough
for a
evidence.
pre-existing non-conforming use.
Exactly my point.
I do not have the continuity
Right.
or the proof. I don't have any witness that can testify as to the continuity.
That's my point, Mr. Gassion.
But
I'm sorry.
that doesn't mean a variance shouldn't be granted.
I'm not
That
saying.
doesn't mean
No,
that.
okay.
Well, Mr.
Look,
Gassion,
you
it also means that for 30 years, they've been being taxed as a 5-unit, not 6. So the town has been getting ripped off for 30 years at least.
Even by
True.
2014 to me.
However,
But
usually...
not by this applicant.
No, only for 3 years. My point to you is, you keep straddling that line, Mr. Gassion. You're telling me all of the pre-existing stuff that exists, but now you want to address the variance issue.
This is an old building that predates the zoning ordinance. You're talking about a variance because there's units on the first floor. That's what we're talking about. Units on the first floor. The density shouldn't even be a factor because the building was built in the 1920s. It's the same size. It hasn't been expanded.
No, but
There's
the
no
amount of
issue.
units have been
Units have been
expanded.
expanded.
I'm sorry?
The amount of units have been expanded.
Could be.
Because
I
if
don't
that
have
building was built with all these units, then this unit wouldn't have just a shower, where every other unit has a bathtub, which was my question before, but you didn't know what the relevance was.
I still don't think that's relevant because this is a studio unit built differently.
This was a
350
studio
square
unit that
feet.
was built because it was probably part of that store, and they
And
wanted
that's-
to add a unit.
And that's possible, I can't answer that, except that store was a barber shop, and I can't testify, so I won't say it.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Continue.
Continue.
Purpose C of the municipal land use law is to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, and communities. That's what this does. It supports the businesses by adding this apartment. That's what the municipal land use law is saying, that you have the residential component to help the businesses. Another purpose of the municipal land use law is to promote a desirable visual environment. The applicant, based on your professional's letters, has agreed to plant trees both on the Joralemon side and on the side street, to put a screening around the refuse area, exterior lighting in the rear of the parking lot, and if I remember correctly, also to repair some sidewalks. So these are all visual improvements that help to make it a desirable visual environment. Based on, I think that that proves the positive criteria. With respect to the negative criteria, we have to establish that there is no substantial detriment to the public good. The fact that the apartment, as I said before, has existed for 25 years or more or less based on testimony, in my opinion, there's no detriment to the public good.
Mr. Marucci, is there public transportation somewhere in the area?
Yes, on Franklin Avenue is a bus route, which is only a few minutes walk from the site to Franklin Avenue, and that bus route can take you to I keep forgetting the name of the light rail, and the light rail takes you to Penn Station, so there is public transportation available.
Should this application be denied, can this space be easily attached to another apartment in this building?
No, based on the floor plan, it cannot. There's the store in between, so it cannot be made part of the other apartment.
And in the pictures that you showed the board to start with, are there apartments on the first floor in all of these buildings?
Yes.
And are these older buildings built, probably, at least one of them probably built in the 20s also?
Based on the architecture, in my opinion, yes.
And is one of them actually have a whole series of basement apartments?
The windows look like they're just, the apartments are below grade, yes.
Is this picture number one you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Marucci,
Yes.
previous testimony that those buildings are the same zone as this building. I have a copy of the master plan, map, and it's showing that these two buildings look like they're in an apartment complex zone. And the corner, which is where the bar is commercial, and the property we're talking about with yours is commercial.
I could be wrong if the other apartment buildings are not in the same zone. I apologize if I made an error there. But again, if you look at the character of the area though, these are in such close proximity.
And none of these have stores, am I correct, these buildings here?
They do not have stores, that's correct.
Right. That's dated 2008, by the way.
These buildings were built before that zoning.
Oh, I'm not arguing
Long
that
before
point.
that zoning.
I'm not arguing that point. All I'm saying is there's never been any proof that this was 6 units in this building. Never.
I'm not trying to prove it was 6
But he's
units
trying
as
to
a certificate.
justify it should have been 6.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because of what the proofs show. The proofs show it was 6. But
When was it 6? Legally? Tell me, Mr.
it's
Gassion.
never, if it was legal, I wouldn't be here for a variance.
Exactly.
So
So
why-
I say
what
you
kind
should
of
never
question is
say
that?
it's been a 6 legally. Never.
I am not,
No, we're not
I
saying this.
can't, if it was a 6 legally, I wouldn't have to come for a variance.
I know that.
So why?
Because you insinuated when you talked about that it was built years ago, before there was a zoning law.
It's true.
and Before there was a density.
That's true.
So you're giving an impression that at one time this was legal.
No, I said from the beginning, I didn't have the proof to do that, and Mr. Valano asked that question at the outset.
But you're implying
But you're not considering what I'm putting in with regard to 6 units and what happened when my client bought the property and the tax record, not the tax record.
Ah, you see, he said the tax record.
The rent control records, state of New Jersey records, they show 6 units. So that's the point. In any event, any further questions of this witness?
Any other questions by members of the board?
Before I ask a question,
I'll let you continue.
Mr. Rego, when he talks about the negative and positive criteria, right? And we're now talking about a variance, right? Does the fact that it was being used in their testimony 25 years have anything to do with the negative criteria?
Well,
I'll answer that one after Mr. Rego.
I'm gonna let Mr. Rego.
A lot of attorneys use, and a lot of planners use a fact like that, not to be the be-all and the end-all, but as a factor. The fact that it's been there and it hasn't hurt anybody.
In their opinion.
Yes.
Right.
It's something to consider.
But how do you
It
say?
doesn't make it legal, it just, the thought is, it's been there, we're not adding anything new to the area, it's been there, it hasn't harmed anything, so there's no harm in letting it continue. It's not a per se special reason, it's a factor to be considered.
But it's not a positive criteria.
No, well, it's,
But that wasn't your question. Your question was it a negative?
I said, how does it figure into negative or positive criteria? How? That's what I said.
if you have a municipality that needs a lot of housing, let's say, a planner could argue, yes, it's been there, we don't know if it's legal, how far back it goes, but it adds to the housing stock, it's been there for 25 years, it's something to be considered.
That's an answer.
Yeah, something like that. Now,
If it's needed, the housing.
well, yeah, I think here, what they're saying, among other things, is that nothing's gonna change. We're gonna make the outside, we're gonna spruce it up with landscaping and lighting. The studio apartment's been there. One question that, or an issue that came up, I think Willie asked about it, I think it was Mr. Sessa talked about, and I think Mr. Mileto talked about 10 electric panels, or whatever you call them, and 10 gas meters. But we have an 11 studio apartment, and we don't know which one is the common. That's kind
Which I
of,
can't believe nobody knows.
that's kind of, you know, again, maybe that studio is feeding off another unit somewhere.
And we don't know how it's heated. We don't have.
It's not
Well,
11.
We drew
it's just
an
10.
architect, we don't know how
It's
it's
10.
heated.
It's 6 and 4 is 10, but there's no thing that says who's paying for the hallway lights.
It's a
If
minor
there's a
matter,
big boiler.
it'd be nice to know, you know.
You never got an answer of how the building's heated.
We don't know. Nobody knows.
Well, the owner should know.
I didn't ask them.
Yeah, and it's.
That unit is on the general,
The common,
The common area.
so,
So they don't pay their electric, the landlord technically pays their electric?
I'm not sure about that, but the landlord provides all the heat,
There you go.
all the units, all.
Well, the units.
What form of
One
heat?
unit.
I'm an attorney. You know
Supposed
what
to answer
kind
this
of heat?
question.
gas heat.
Gas.
So one of the gas meters of the 10 provides the heat for the building, altogether.
Correct.
So that means there's only 9 gas meters that go to the apartments and the stores.
I just said that.
Correct.
No, we were talking about electric before, now we're talking about gas. 2 things. Okay, continue.
Questions to the witness?
I asked my question and my attorney.
But with any special reason, it has to key into the general welfare. It's just not a personal thing, as you know. It's got to be, the general welfare is going to be benefited to some degree, and that usually ties in with special reasons and how the property is particularly suited for that.
I'll quote my dear friend, Mr. Gashion. We agree to disagree.
Okay.
I still have a chance to sum up.
Oh, yes, we still do. Any other questions by members of the board of the witness based upon testimony? Any questions by the public of the witness based upon testimony? Yes, ma'am. Come up so we can be seen and give your name and address, please.
My name is Solidarity Goyen, and I'm on 12 Main Street.
So can you spell your last name for me, please?
I-R-I-G-O-Y.
Wait, one more time.
I-R-I-G-O-Y.
Thank you.
And you have questions for,
Well, yes, the question is in general, I mean, I got
It
this
has to be
letter.
based on his testimony.
Yes, of course. Well, in general, is this going to affect somehow the neighborhood or the neighbors? How does it affect us? I'm behind them.
In my opinion, it does not affect the neighborhood at all. Number one, this apartment has been there based on testimony for 25 years. The parking situation is the same, and I'll say it again, if the apartment
I think it was 30 years to be accurate.
No. The locksmith
You
is
said 87, didn't you say
Lock-
87?
87.
Thank you, that's 30 years.
The
Gotta
locks-
add up right.
The locksmith is there since 1987. He testified that, to his knowledge, the apartment's been there for approximately 25 years. So, to answer your...
That's what he said.
Yes. To answer your
So what
question,
he said is for 5 years that he was there
He
was no...
can't remember if it was that for 5 years. He's not testifying for the first
Oh,
5
okay,
years.
But-
all right, okay.
but to answer your question, in my opinion, nothing changes to the neighborhood. It's been like this, and nothing really changes.
All right.
If the-
they're not adding anything.
If the
What they're saying
apartment...
is that it's been this way and they want to now make it legal.
So
And as I said before, if the apartment could not be there and the store has to be made bigger, that actually increases your parking requirement. That would affect the residents more so, because now you would need more
So that-
parking.
During the day when the stores are open.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
all right. So the density is not an issue then?
Ma'am, it is an issue.
It is?
It is an
Okay.
issue.
Well, I don't know.
It is an issue.
Because they're only allowed 1.5 units on that property. But not the 5 that are legal and not the 6 that are illegal.
But
The
again,
sixth one, that's it.
but again, this building was built before zone and before that density even became an issue.
Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome,
Thank
thank you. Any other questions by members of the public? No, you may call your next witness if you have
I have no further witnesses.
No further witnesses. Okay. Do you wish to sum up? Oh, wait a minute. Any members of the public wish to give testimony? I'm sorry. No member of the public wish to give testimony. Okay, Mr. Gassion, you may sum up.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, obviously, this is an existing structure. We're not increasing anything. We're just using the existing building that was built in the 1920s. My client, when acquiring this, had the multiple housing inspection certificate showing 6. The rent records for many years showing 6. The listing agreement that said 6. The contract of purchase that said 6. The Hawley information sheet, Hawley being the realtor, that said 6. You've heard the testimony of Mr. Roberts. To the best of his knowledge, for at least 25 years, it's been an apartment. There is sufficient parking. There is not a parking problem, despite a major parking variance. There seems to be adequate parking because there are very few residents that have cars, and those that have cars have one. My client reached an agreement with the property owner across the street, should there be a need for additional parking, that he could rent from him. My client has changed the plan to comply with the requests of Mr. DiLorenzo and Mr. Hertz. Public transportation is available a few blocks away if there's any issue with regard to access. The unit cannot readily be made part of another apartment. This is a multi-family area, obviously. There are large old buildings that were, some of which predate the zoning ordinance, some of which do not predate the zoning ordinance. But there are large old buildings with many units in them. It's consistent with the neighborhood. There's a D1 variance. The D1 variance is for one reason. Not on the first floor. Not on the first floor. That's the only reason. It's not like apartments are prohibited. It's supposed to be commercial at this corner on the first floor. And I have untold number of variances in developed towns where it's very difficult to have the apartments, to have complete commercial on the first floor. Because we all know what's going on. The big box stores, the major stores are pulling away all the potential commercial tenants. The D5 density, the density is certainly above what was permitted, but again, when this building was built, there was no density required. There's a need for small apartments, absolute need for small apartments. This is a reason for allowing almost a micro unit. I'm sure you're going to be hearing about micro units more and more over the years. That's what the trend is on some of the younger people or older people wanting to live in an inexpensive small unit. You need to have a variety of residential components, and this creates the variety. The studio apartment is unique in Belleville. There are not many studio apartments. Certainly, there's not going to be any harm to the intent and purpose of the zone plan established. This application is approved. It's been used this way for, we know, 25 years. The building's not being expanded. There's going to be benefits because my client is improving the aesthetics of the building because of this, lining the parking lot, making arrangements for parking. There's big improvements that are done if this application is approved. And I thank the board for their time and attention. Excuse me for getting hoarse.
Okay. Mr. Di Lorenzo, can I have that map I gave you, please?
It's right there.
Oh, here it is, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't even know you told me. Okay. So, I have this to say about this application. There was testimony given. There is, if you include this unit, 8 bedrooms. You only have 5 parking spaces. What agreement about across the street, I don't care about because number one, even if you have a written agreement, it's not in perpetuity, it always changes. The amount of tenants you get, there may always be tenants that have a car. Okay, you have 5 legal units, you have 5 parking spaces. I went by the other night, it was 4 cars, not 3, parked there. I've gone through that area a lot, and I can tell you, at night, now during the day, probably people are working, so they're not using the parking spaces, probably the stores do. But at night, that is so hard to park over there, primarily because of the bar across the street, the Ross Common House, that it's virtually impossible to find a parking space. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, not the board's, that number one, this has gone on for years, no taxes have been paid as a 6, it's been paid as a 5. The heating is being done, I don't know where the heating is being paid for that apartment, it's probably being paid by the landlord like the electrical is. Well, the electrical, we didn't mention the heat. The 10th meter is for the heating of the whole building. And he probably heats that apartment too, whenever the guy uses a stove. But all those apartments, and that is an old building, and it is old, all the apartments have bathtubs. That apartment has a stall shower, which means it probably was done after the building was built. But, as far as the negative criteria, there is a big parking problem in that area. And I cannot agree on increasing the density. Just because it was there, that doesn't mean it's right. I can't agree on increasing the density, and sooner or later there may be more people that need parking spaces, and the parking there is atrocious in that neighborhood at night. So I will not be voting in favor of this application. It's up to the other board members how they feel about the application, but I will be voting no.
I would like to add that I concur with our chairman about the parking situation. As he said, the possibility of an arrangement with the pharmacy across the street is really legally irrelevant. And with our board members, I'm starting to have flashbacks of the Ramita case. At least this time around, we're not dealing with cross-easement issues. But that neighborhood, is, Jerry acknowledged, is atrocious when it comes to parking in the evening. And I don't think there's adequate parking available now or in the future for the residents of that building. It may be such that at this moment, there's just enough parking to accommodate the people that are living there, but things can change, and we have no way of accommodating future demands on parking for that structure.
Anybody else wish to make any comments? Mr. Milano?
I've talked all night, so I'm on the web.
I know you talked all night, but that doesn't say how you intend to vote.
So I'll ask my colleagues to take the lead.
Oh, well, I think I did that already.
You didn't need to make a motion.
No, I'm talking about it in discussion.
I heard what you said.
Okay. Anybody else wish to give any statement? Does anybody wish to make a motion? Or I'll make a motion? Nobody else wish?
Don't you want?
I'll make a motion to deny. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Valano. Clerk, call the roll.
Yes is to deny.
Yes is to deny. Yes is to
Yes.
deny.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know what we're talking about. She's got to call her name.
Caruso.
Now.
Yes, I said yes.
Okay, well, you just got to call your name first.
I said.
Go ahead.
Casa.
Yes.
Oza.
Yes.
Fucci.
Yes.
Sheldon.
Yes.
Valado.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes, denied, 7-0.
Thank you for your time and attention.
You're welcome. Okay, folks.
Good night.
Oh, we have a resolution on the board, so I'll put you here.
Thank you.
Matter of links, asset service, application ZB 2017-013, memorialized Caruso.
Russo.
Yes.
John, she's calling your name.
Oh,
Gina.
yeah.
Casa.
Yes.
Lozo. Yes. Sheldon.
Yes.
Valado.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes, yes, definitely, yes.
Matter of Salvatore Gagliello, 1 Harland Avenue, application ZB 2017-010. Caruso.
Yes.
Casa.
Yes.
Lozo.
Yes.
Sheldon.
Yes.
Valado.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.